and welcome to an Everyday Canines video. In this episode on ETO, we're going to discuss how can you help your dog if they have early takeoff syndrome. Now, the first thing to bear in mind is that because there are so many causes for early takeoff syndrome, and they're to do with the vision, that each dog is slightly different. So what may work for one dog may not work for the other. The other thing to bear in mind is that it isn't a training issue as such, it's a physical problem. So it's not something you can train out. If you can train out early takeoff, it wasn't early takeoff syndrome. It was basically an inexperience, not knowing how to jump. Some people suggest doing jump grids, but quite frankly, if the dog it might be able to competently do jump grids, but if they're having trouble with their eyes and they're not seeing things properly, it won't make a blind bit of difference when you actually get into running courses and sequences. My Sparrow, I can do jump grids with her. It is noticeable she struggles, and I actually think she finds them very frustrating. So I don't do them with her, because if you compare it to my dogs that are capable of doing them, you can see the difference. And so I can set her up, and if I do set her up exactly where I want her for one jump, she can take the jump perfectly. It's when she has to make that decision for herself. So jump grids, though they get suggested a lot when people talk about early takeoff syndrome, they're not necessarily the answer. If a dog had very mild vision issues, they might help, but in most dogs they don't. What does tend to help dogs with early takeoff syndrome is having the support of the handler. So there's probably more dogs out there with early takeoff than we know if they're being run by people who keep level with them. And this is possibly also why we're seeing the problem more now than we used to. Previously, years ago with agility, certainly in the UK, tended to be that people always ran everywhere with their dogs. It was a very handler-based training, which means that the motion-based training, so that means that the dog followed the handler's motion, or basically you used to say about the dog was on the end of your finger and you used to point exactly where you go. Because dogs with early takeoff syndrome need that assistance, that visual assistance from the handler, that sort of training, that sort of method of handling helps them enormously, because they can follow the handler rather than having to make decisions on their own about where the jump is. The situation we have more these days is because courses are getting spread out. People are tending to do more distance handling. So this is based on verbal cues, the dog having to do stuff by itself. When the dog has to do stuff by itself, that then is making the choice how to jump, how to do various obstacles. It's no longer got that handler feedback so much. If you look at some of the big courses we're getting now, even top fast handlers aren't able to run with their dog to get to them. So what they're having to do is send the dog on to get somewhere else. If you've got a dog with ETO, that can cause them a problem. I saw this particularly with Sparrow. So Sparrow started as a motion-based trained dog, and she coped well enough with that, and it was a number of years before I even realised we had this ETO, and it was only because I was looking at things and started to do a bit of research and thought, she takes off early sometimes. And it was more a case that I noticed she was prone to missing her weave entries, and she's always struggled with difficult weave entries. Then I reached a stage where I realised that being able to run with her was not going to happen. I'm not as fast as Sparrow. There's no way I can keep up with her. As the courses were getting more complex, I needed her to do things independently. So I started to move into distance handling. And that was when we had a problem. Sparrow has never been able to develop the distance handling skills that my other dogs have. And she struggles when I start to ask her to send out obstacles on her own independently. We start to get a lot of I'm not sure, uncertainty. In fact, it's actually knocked her confidence, and I've actually had to stop that because I can see her confidence has dropped because she's just not sure where things are, and she's also not sure how she's going to reach them or get through them. If it's a weave entry, she's not sure how to get there. Now, I can do some very clever sequences with her if I have trained them in the field and I've asked her to pattern them, because when she's patterned them, she has learnt where all the obstacles are. So she can do that and she can look amazing. I can stand in one spot and send her around and you would think she's a really clever distance handled dog, but that's because she's learnt where things are and she's very good at that. As soon as you get onto a fresh course that's brand new, then we start having problems, because just when she's not sure where things are. With her, I need to be with her as much as possible, and sometimes that isn't possible with me. Sometimes I can't get there, so we end up these muddly runs. You know, they're not like what I can do with Swift what I used to be able to do with Merlin, send them off and get where I need to be, because there are moments where I just get stuck, and you can see sometimes that I run out of steam, and you can see Sparrow slows up and goes, I don't know where I'm going next. What I'm saying is, I think that's why we're seeing more and more dogs being recognised with this problem, because of the way handling has changed. For a dog to be able to distance handle successfully, they really need to have that good vision, and so they have that ability to drive out independently. And so now I think that's why we're starting to see this coming through more and recognise it. What that means for us as a handler is basically we need to support the dog. We need to support them with body. And that is hard if you're not able to be with your dog. I am not able to be with Sparrow all the time. She is way too fast for me to be able to do that, and quite frankly, I'm not that fast, and I have a few niggles that mean I can't run that quickly and successfully. I sometimes think if she had a handler who could run successfully, she'd actually do a lot better. But that being said, we do success. Let's face it, I've got her to grade 7, and we can do successful things. We've just recently run in a craft singles, and had it not been for a naughty missed contact, she would have come 9th in that. So clearly we are capable. What it means is that I have to be very strategic with her, far more than I have to be with my other dogs. I have to look at a course, and I have to say to myself, where do I need to be to help her? And where can I potentially let her go and do something? Now, I know I can't expect her to do weave entries on her own independently, unless it's a straight entry. Generally on a straight entry, and especially if it's right hand, she can get it. If it's a soft entry into, or even a sharper entry into a left hand weave, the odds are she'll miss the first pole, and she'll go in on the second pole. So I have to really be there and guide her. We've even found this in training. We've experimented heavily in training, and the same happens. With contacts, because they're nice and big and solid, generally I can send her onto them, she can get to them, and I can just carry on where I need to be. We have trouble with rear crosses. I think that's because Sparrow doesn't like the fact she doesn't know where I'm going to be next. And that is clearly obvious. If she's relying on my body motion, if I do something like out of a tunnel and she goes in a tunnel and I'm on the wrong side when she comes out, that's going to knock her confidence because she doesn't know where I am. And because she isn't able to use those verbals so well independently, because she doesn't really have the confidence in herself to do that and the ability, then that's caused issues. So we've never been able to rear cross tunnels, never been able to rear cross on an A-frame. Now, interestingly, there used to be old schools of handling where you never did rear crosses, and you always kept your dog on the side you needed them to drive on. So that was one of the books I read when I was first starting, and those methods of handling would actually suit Sparrow down to the ground. Another little factor I notice is that when I'm coming up to tunnels, if I hesitate or stop, she pulls off. That might not be I so much as a training error. I don't know. That's a bit of a grey area. I do know she struggles to find entries into tunnels on certain sides. So when I'm looking at a course, I look at a course and I say, right, that's a straight line of jumps and there's a tunnel. There's a good chance I can get Sparrow to drive up into that tunnel without me having to really travel down there with her. So then I can get to where I need to be next. On the other hand, if it's something where there's a bit more complicated handling going on, I'm going to have to keep with her. I might look at a situation where she's in the weaves and I can get ahead of her. Now I can get ahead of her quite nicely and do blinds, that's good. Rear crosses on weaves, no. So I need to say, right, is this a situation where the weaves are that I can run ahead of her and get to somewhere I need to be and turn her off? If there's a contact in there, then I can usually say, right, I can get up the contact. The big issue comes is this layering that needs to be done. We're not going to do that very easily, even though I have spent many sessions training Sparrow to layer, bless her heart. And when she patterns the layers, she is beautiful. She looks like this most amazing distance dog. So I have to be really thoughtful when I go around a course with her and think to myself, where do I need to be? Where can I say to myself, she's gonna probably, because we always have sometimes quirks, probably go ahead and find tunnels. On top of that, I need to say to myself, what are the lighting conditions like? Because this today is actually perfect for Sparrow. This is beautiful because it's all a consistent light, there are no shadows, There are no really bright lights. The sun is not down, so it's in her eyes. Sometimes I get to a course, and if it's certain times of the year and the sun is low on the horizon, because even sometimes in the year, early in the mornings, evening times, sometimes even in the afternoon, the sun gets low. If she's driving into that sun, she's going to have trouble. So when I'm walking a course, I have to say to myself, where is the sun right now? Is it a day when she might have problems? Secondly, is the sun going to be there when I run? Because of course sometimes we walk a course and we may not run it for the next hour. So all these factors come together, and I have to really consider what we're doing. I also have to consider the ground conditions, because what I found with Sparrow is she's far more prone to slipping and knocking poles and falling over than my other dogs. Now you could say she's a bit of she's a cocker, she's a klutz, but actually the clumsiness tends to be from the vision, and it's because she thinks she's taking a jump straight, and then she'll look at me and she'll go, oh, I'm not taking the jump straight. She wants me to turn, she'll try and turn at the last minute, and she'll tumble and she'll slip. Because of this, and because she's a bit crash bang wallop, if the weather is very wet, the ground is very wet, that's a no-go for me for running her. It's not worth it. She's likely to slip over, and that she has to make these adjustments at the last minute in the air. She's going to hurt herself. So that makes a no-go for me. All these factors, as I say, come together, but the biggest one I find is being there with my dog to be able to use my body motion to handle a jump. Now, I've got more in these videos to talk to you about. There's lots going on here, and some of this will be specific to your dog. Some of it you've probably never seen in your dog. But again, it's all the quirks that can come up with this. So we're going to look at different aspects in more detail and go into obstacles more detail. But that's broadly speaking what you need to know. If you're handling a dog with ETO, you're going to need to be with them. There's one last thing. Some dogs have ETO so badly, it potentially is hazardous for them to run agility at their full height. Now, Sparrow only has to run small. I think if she had to run medium, we'd have a lot more problems. But as she only has to run small, we don't often drop poles, and most of the time when we drop poles, it is just a pole dropping. I have had some nasty instances where she's landed on a pole, which are horrible to see, and because you don't know how much that does to them, so I don't like anything like that. If she started to do a lot of things like that, and we're increasing the risk of injury, then at that stage, I would have to call it quits with her doing agility. And I do know people who have had dogs, in larger dogs, collies, who've got ETO, and they've had to sort of stop running their dog at full height because it is just hazardous for the dog. So that's the one caveat I say. You can certainly be successful with a dog with ETO, and you can certainly run, but there are some where the problem is just that so bad it isn't safe for you to run them at agility. Just be aware of that. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that's made sense. As I said, I'm going to go into more detail in different aspects as we go further along to help you out. And I would love you to share comments and ideas. And if you've got any questions about early takeoff syndrome, please share them with me, because they may be something I can answer in a video, or maybe that's another area we need to look at. So, please communicate with me and tell me out, because this is a topic that really interests me and I think is a very important topic. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, you might like to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram. And I hope to see you all again very, very soon.